Hey guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode, and I'm delighted to introduce Jeff Siegel, and he is a entrepreneur. He's also going to talk to us about leadership and strategy, management, and the role of data analytics and marketing, storytelling, and I'm really happy to welcome Jeff to the show. Jeff, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be on. Excited to chat with you today.
Yeah, I think your message is gonna really resonate with the segment of the audience that is in the corporate world and talking about, management and
Yes.
strategy. Talk about your early experiences and how you got to be doing what you're doing.
Sure. So actually, I like to say that most of my career was a marketer, but I like to say that the toughest marketing job that I ever had was my first job out of college. I was a high school math and physics teacher, and if you can come up with a harder audience to convince that they're excited about math and physics, so it was trying to get them, kind of get in their heads and sort of understand how they think and get them excited about it. And so it's funny, when I was, so then I went off to business school after teaching for a couple of years, and people were like, "Oh, I'm a career switcher. I'm going from accounting to marketing," and I'm like, "Oh, I'm a career switcher. I'm going from teaching to marketing." But it's interesting how much similarity there is. I mean, it's the human beings. You're trying to convince them to get them to sort of do something, behave in a certain way, think in a certain way, whatever. So that's really sort of was the connection for me, was just understanding people, and that was how I got into marketing. And so my career, I spent a number of years at Nabisco on the Oreo cookie brand and Ritz crackers and so forth. And then I worked at the Hershey company, where I always say my kid's favorite title I ever had was when I was the director of Twizzlers and Jolly Rancher. And then I worked for a grocery store company. I worked for a Cracker Barrel, a restaurant company, for a number of years, doing a whole bunch of different things, marketing, data, stuff, etc. But really, for me, I guess it all goes back to that teaching experiences. I just, throughout that experience, always loved coaching people, mentoring people, helping people grow in their careers. And so, for me, I left my corporate role to start my own thing in October, and really have been focusing on, particularly on middle managers, the folks that are sort of, from their first time, leading people all the way up until you're like a VP, just before you're on like an executive team. Those people in the middle are so important to the organization, and making sure that those people have the right skills and capabilities, I think is super important. I'm a little obsessed with it. I'm actually in the process of writing a book about it. I mean, it's just a topic that I love talking about. So.
Yeah. Yeah, which really sets the stage for our discussion, and because you've had a diverse career, and you've helped, big brands like Oreo, Twizzlers, especially in today's age where anything can happen. Share some insights on the challenges of aligning strategic planning with execution in large organizations and how leaders can stay relevant.
Sure. So, it's interesting. I don't know if you've had this experience. I've certainly experienced it in my career, where somebody sort of, usually at the top of the organization, comes up with a strategic idea, and then it just doesn't happen. And so there's this fascinating question, like, what is it that causes strategic ideas to sort of get lost in translation? And I always sort of think about it as there's basically five different pieces that I generally talk about. The first one is, if you want your strategy to happen, you have to have a strategy. So that one's sort of obvious. The second piece has to do with how you communicate your strategy. So are you communicating clearly, not only to your customers what it is that you deliver, but to your employees, so that they understand really well what it is that they are supposed to be doing and why they're doing it. The third piece is data. Data is really like data is like the nervous system of strategy, right? I mean, if you don't have feedback coming from your customers to say the top of the house and then feedback going back down in both directions and have really good data lines of data, you really can't bring a strategy to life, because strategy, we like to think of, oh, we write down strategy on paper and then it's good, but reality is strategy has to constantly be reacting to the reality of the situation. The third piece is really, how does the strategy become operational? Or I'm sorry, I misnumbered there. The fourth piece is, how does the strategy get operationalized? And I always like to use this analogy because I worked in a restaurant company for many years. Is the analogy is when you go into a restaurant, one of the ways to get the servers to care about the guests, you can tell them to care about the guests, but one of the ways that restaurants use this is they say to the servers, refill the glasses, because refilling the glasses is a way of getting that server back to the table, making sure everything's good, whatever. And so the behavior of caring for the guests versus refilling glasses is more concrete, it's clear, and it's strategic because it's delivering on the strategy, but it's giving your employees the sort of a something to do that really helps deliver on the strategy. And then the last piece, the fifth piece, is really culture. And culture is like, does your company believe in this idea that the strategy needs to really permeate everything we do, from the data to the operations and so forth? So that's how, in my view, that's how, sort of how strategy becomes disconnected, because those things aren't happening. But if you really want to connect strategy and make it actually happen, you have to have all those pieces in place.
Yeah. I love that. And the kind of it's like and again with anytime you're dealing with corporations, government, bureaucracy, and especially with technology and AI coming into the play and really shaking things up,
Mhm.
it's really important to be able to stay nimble. The other question I have is this middle management idea, and a lot
Yeah.
of these, especially with like AI and a lot of companies cutting, and they're not having enough employees. Now they're going after middle management and executives, holding them more accountable. But what are some key qualities that distinguish a really good middle manager? How can they support their growth and success, and kind of keep these guys around?
Sure. So actually, so like I said, I love talking about this topic, and so I will just start with just a basic framework. I think, everybody I talk to, whether it's middle managers or the people that lead middle managers, have like a pain point around middle management. The middle managers are like, I don't know how to do this job. And the upper managers are like, those people don't know how to do their job, right? And everybody's sort of looking at this and going, what is going on here? And to me, it really boils down to this really fundamental and very simple idea. To be in a middle management role is to have three different roles at the same time. You have to do work, so you're a doer. You have to lead a team, so you're a leader. And you have to get all these people around you that don't report to you and whatever to do things, cross-functionally, whatever, do things with you, for you, whatever. So you're also an influencer. You have to do all of those things. And so to me, to answer your question, what makes a really good middle manager is somebody who understands that those are three distinct roles, and that they have actually sort of developed the set of skills for each of those roles. So how do I become a great doer? Things like I have attention to detail, having a can-do attitude. All of those kinds of things are what makes somebody a great doer. How do I become a great leader? Well, the biggest problem I find with people with leadership is that they basically spent their whole career up until they became a leader as a doer, and suddenly they are in this situation where they have to lead, and they have not ever really been given any training in leading. I mean, you've got a couple of degrees, I think, like you're trained for years to be a doctor, or you're trained for years to be a PhD. But leader, it's like, oh, look, you're in charge of people now. Good luck. Maybe we'll give you like a 2-day session or whatever. And so the leadership piece actually, I think, tends to be hardest for people because they don't actually view leading as work. To them, the work is, the bench work if they're a chemist, or doing the spreadsheets if they're an accountant, or whatever it is. But actually leading, giving people feedback and so forth is viewed as kind of like that's just, the side stuff, right? It's not real work. And so I think that mindset of, no, the real work of the leader is to grow my team, is to, to give people feedback, to help them get better, is what, sort of helps somebody be a great leader. And then an influencer, I always say that the trick to being a great influencer is to realize this one very important fact, which is that every person that you interact with, every person in the world believes that they are the hero of their story. And if you can sort of look at what they're doing from the perspective of, oh, they're the hero of their story, just like I'm the hero of my story, you can influence them by basically saying, how do I help them be a hero? And so those are those three roles, that doer, leader, influencer, are the things that I always focus on. And if you want to make somebody a great middle manager, you have to really help them understand how to do each of those roles.
Yeah, and it's so well said because again, especially doctors, we know we're just so used to doing things, and so we can't, it's hard to delegate, and we're for lack of a better term, a lot of us are type A, control freaks, and we want to be in the middle of everything. So kind of relinquish that and kind of delegating and training someone to do that position. So
Point is, I think particularly with type A people, like the type of folks that like get an MD or a PhD or both or whatever, is that people tend to view themselves as being their results. This idea that I am my results, I am my degrees, but the reality is what got you there, what got you to be a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant or a marketer or whatever, a strategist, is that you were a great learner, that you are a terrific learner. That's how you got where you're going. And so all of those achievements are great, but they are just sort of milestones. What you've been great at all your life is being a great learner. And I think one of the things that sort of that mindset shift allows is that suddenly when you become a leader, you have to step back and realize, like, you have not spent anywhere near as much time learning to lead as you spent learning to be a doctor or learning to be a lawyer or an accountant. And you've got to get yourself into that mindset of, I've got to learn this. This is a set of skills just like any other set of skills.
yeah, it's the skill set that and a lot of it's cross transferable. We can do a lot of different things with that skill. You talked about learning, success, and yeah. Now moving on is in organizations, a lot of it is marketing, and we'll talk about consumer engagement, brand storytelling, and business development. So I'm interested in this day and age, the information age. Discuss the importance of data maturity and analytical readiness in marketing, and how should companies approach this?
Yeah, so this is a fascinating sort of construct that I sort of came across so the first thing I'll say is, speaking of being a learner, so I basically was a marketing guy, and I was noticing in my last corporate job, this was at Cracker Barrel, I noticed that a lot of times we couldn't answer key questions. I would ask finance, like, how many pancakes did we sell yesterday? And they just like, we don't know, it'll take us a week to figure it out. I'm like, something's wrong here. And so it turned out we had really strong data engineering function and really strong finance function, but there was some missing pieces in the middle, the analytics pieces or whatever. And so that was where I sort of raised my hand and said, I don't know anything about this, but I know how to sort of build teams and so forth. And so I'm going to build a team that helps, create a data analytics function. And so that's what I did. And one of the things that was amazing about that job is I just learned a ton from the people that worked for me. They just knew so much more than I did. And so they talked about these sort of two dimensions on which you can really understand where a company is in terms of its data. So the first dimension is data maturity. And a lot of people talk about data maturity. This is like, do you have the right technology in place? Do the people know how to do the work? Is the data quality good? All that kind of stuff. So you can essentially have anywhere from low data maturity where you just have like a bunch of, there's data, but nobody can access it and whatever. And you can have that situation go all the way to you've got an amazingly high, tech, all the data is great, it's easy to access and whatever. But there's this other dimension, which I call analytical readiness. And analytical readiness is about the human side. So in other words, are we ready as an organization to use the data that we have? And the problem is a lot of times the data maturity can be really good, but the analytical readiness is low. In other words, because I've never seen the data used in the right way, I don't have the knowledge of how I might use the data. So my example that I always give this is like you can basically, if you basically gave somebody who's used to using an abacus as to count, and you give them a calculator, and they might just start doing 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 because they don't understand that the calculator can multiply and do exponent and all these kind of things or whatever. So if you don't sort of create that understanding of, hey, I've given you all these tools, but here's how you can use these tools to really, leverage this data as best you can. They will basically sort of use, they'll basically be stuck with a digital abacus instead of a calculator, to use my analogy. So
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Next question I have is this brand storytelling and consumer engagement. And again, you working for iconic brands, how do you craft a compelling story in building brands and consumer engagement today, and kind of share an example where story
sure.
dramatically improved the success?
Yeah, so I'm going to go back to something fairly early in my career. I was an associate brand manager on the Oreo brand, so I just got to sort of experience this as a junior person. It was like amazing experience to go through. But Oreo at the time was having kind of a little bit of a rough year. We had launched a lot of new products the previous year, which is always, creates a sort of steep, comparable to overcome the next year. And so we're like, we got to turn this brand around. It's not doing as well as it should be, and so forth. And so we were trying to figure out what is a group of consumers that can really help us grow this brand, or at least turn around the losses on the brand. And so we basically did a bunch of focus groups. And the first focus group we had this group of people who had been buying, like, let's say 10 bags of Oreos a year, and then suddenly dropped to buying like two. And we're like, what's going on here? And so we get, this is the problem sometimes with just looking at the data without actually talking to the people. Like, we actually talked to the people, and what it turned out is most of these people were empty nesters. So their kids had been home, they were buying 10 bags of Oreos, and then suddenly their kids go off to school or whatever, they're not there anymore. And so the problem with that group is there's no story you can tell that's going to reverse that, because the kids have left, they've flown the coop, whatever.
Yeah.
So we ended up talking to this other group. So we ended up talking to this other group that maybe wasn't quite as dramatic. Maybe they'd gone from, like, I don't know, 6 bags to 4 bags a year or whatever. We're trying to figure out what's going on there. And so these, people come into this focus group, and they basically start saying, "Oh yeah, I don't bring Oreos into the house anymore because it's junk food." And but then somebody goes, "But you know what I love about Oreos is that it gets my kids to drink milk." And that's where we were like, wow, there's our strategy. Like, people think this is bad for you, but it is a great way to get your kids to drink milk, which is good for you. And that's the story we ended up telling. And so the way we told that story and across the whole brand was we, put milk splashes on the Oreo packaging. We actually did a promotion with I think it's the California milk folks, who like the Got Milk folks, So we actually put the words "Got Milk" on the Oreo cookie, their logo. We brought back that ice cold milk and an Oreo cookie jingle from, I don't know, whenever it's from the 70s or whatever it was. But everything became about, let's focus focus on this aspect of the brand that people already know and love, which is that people love eating their Oreos with milk, and focus on that and drive the story around that part of the brand, because that is what's going to overcome the concern that we were hearing from our consumers, that basically Oreo is junk food. So that's my one of my favorite brand stories.
Yeah, I love that. To round it out, how can people contact you and follow you and check out your resources and work with you?
Sure. So probably the easiest way to connect with me is on LinkedIn. I have a newsletter that I just launched a couple of weeks ago called Middle Management Matters, where I talk about the middle management pieces of this puzzle that we've been talking about, on a weekly basis. So you can check out my LinkedIn profile, the newsletter, or my website is my company name is proprioceptive.io is the link that you can find me on the web.
Yeah, and for all the audience, let's thank Jeff for coming on and really talking about really his interesting experiences and these very important concepts for organizations. And be sure to give him a like and follow on socials and reach out to him and work with him. So thanks so much for coming on.
Great. Thanks so much for having me.